So basically, yeah, I will speak today about the challenges and the methodology to go global. So basically, Dolce Gusto Online started in United Kingdom, and progressively we rolled it out in many countries. So basically, today Dolce Gusto is present with Magento in over 70 countries and in over 35 Magento instances. So not all countries are e-commerce. Sometimes we use Magento only to present our catalog and drive to retailers or e-retailers. But in major countries, we are full e-commerce and have some advanced features. So basically, on this presentation, I will focus on the topic of the meeting here, which is Magento. But basically, when you go global, I would say that Magento is only the tip of the iceberg. It's only what we focus on, but going global has many consequences. So basically with your ERP, so when you integrate with your ERP, tax, VAT, and many other local requirements, your CRM campaigns are also most of the time country specific. Your customer support, you need to ensure that you're able to support your customer in their languages and that you can answer local troubles or difficulties. And finally, the logistics. So it's one thing to make your website in Spanish, but you have to make sure that you can ship the product there and provide a locally relevant customer experience on your website. So basically, going global, so let's say you start from one website which you have in English and you sell in UK, and you want to start selling in Spain. So of course, the first step is translating your website. So for this, Magento is a great tool, and basically you can just leverage the out-of-the-box Magento functionality to translate your website in order to provide the customer a unified experience across different countries, but in the customer native language. So let's say this is the first step, translate your website and provide a shopping experience which is unified across all your countries. The second step, if you want to go one step further and, as we saw before, optimize your conversion rates. So when I say conversions, for me, it's like account creation, opt-in rates, and of course, checkout success rate. Basically, you have to provide a locally relevant customer experience. So what it means, we'll see it in the next slide. So first, about translation. So I would say translation is not as easy as it sounds, and you should not fall for the simple translation. So hire a simple translation agency, give them your copy deck in English or in your local language and say, okay, I need this translated to Spanish. It won't work. Basically, you should really go for what I would call transcreation. So there is a deep semantic research needed to make sure that the content that you will provide to your Spanish customer uses relevant semantic fields, that the keywords are really adapted to the market, and also the way you present the content is relevant to the market and answers the local questions. So maybe, let's say in Russia, people are used to make coffee, to make long coffee. They want big cups. So when you create your content, basically, you tell them, okay, you need to put more water. So this is how to settle your machine, which is not something we explain in France, because in France, people just follow the instructions. So when you localize your content, is one thing is about the keywords, of course, for SEO. And the second thing is about making sure your content is locally relevant and matches the local habits, let's say like this. As I was saying, when you translate, think SEO from day one. So it's not only about keywords, it's also about URLs localization and technical tags to make sure that your website will be optimized. And of course, be very careful on how you do it, because you don't want to damage your existing website. So if I go from English to Spanish, I don't want to lose my position from the English website. So be very careful on the technical settings. As well, think analytics from day one. So you want to be able to differentiate your conversion rate, for example, from the English store view and from the Spanish store view, and to identify locally relevant analytics. So this is the first step. It's about content. And the second step, which is to about providing a locally relevant customer experience is really focusing on key elements of the checkout process that will enable you to increase your conversion rate. So these are a few examples of local specificities which we had to adapt for on our Magento platform. So for example, for Dolce Gusto South Korea, users there don't use emails. What they want, they are mobile users. For them, the key identifier is not the email address, it's the mobile phone number. And forget emails for transactional messages, they want SMS or local social network Kakao. For France, in France, you don't want to receive the package at home. People really want to be able to go pick up the package from a pickup point next to their job during their lunch break or after their work. So forget traditional shipping methods. You need to be able to propose drop point location as a shipping method. In Portugal, Portugal users are very used to buy online but pay offline. So in Portugal, you can go to any ATM and you have a special function in the ATM where you enter an order reference and you can pay for an order that you placed online, but you pay it in the ATM. And for example, in Taiwan, their currency doesn't have decimals. So forget about percentage discount, because if you do 25% discount, how do you round the amounts? So basically, these are just few examples of local specificities that can have a direct impact on the checkout process and also on proving your customer that you really know their market. Because if you do a percentage discount in Taiwan, it just proves Taiwanese customers that you never looked at what is a real promotion in Taiwan. So these are few examples of local specificities. So basically now, how to go global. So let's say you have identified the market you want to go to, and you will have to take key decisions. So first, as I said, for content, always use English as a base. It will be much easier. So have all your documentations, your copy deck, any documentation ready in English. It will make the process much easier, especially if you are in a phase where you will industrialize this going global later. So you start by one country, but having everything in English will allow you to go much faster for the second, third, fourth country, and so on. Then ensure that you map your e-commerce organization to the roles existing in your company. So it's one thing to start selling in Spain, but how will you manage it? Because you need to be sure that the person who will manage the web shop, can she see the analytics of your English web shop? Can she, in the Magento backend, damage your English catalog? So you have to make sure that your Magento organization, in that case, is really matching your sales and your hierarchy in your company to segment or not your e-commerce organization. And then, let's say one key decision is about your total cost of ownership of your Magento platform. Because going global, of course, will increase your cost, and you will have to take key decisions. So do you have one instance per country? We'll see after what it could help you to achieve. Or do you add additional websites in one single instance? As well, if you go for several Magento instances, do you have one single code base for all your countries? Or do you allow each country to just add a new feature to their own code base? So basically, in our case, in Dolce Gusto, we have, as I said, over 75 countries and over 35 instances, but you have one single code base. Why? Because when you need to apply the new security patch of Magento, then you want to make your rollout process much easier. So having one single code base, in our case, is much easier to manage. So to get one single code base, you have to be able to identify local specificities to answer to the feature and to make it work in a single code base. So local specificities are divided in two kinds. So you have legal and tax. So for example, accessibility laws in more and more countries, such as Australia, Israel, you need to make your website readable for software for blind people. So this has a direct impact on the code base of your website. Then you have terms and condition acceptance. More and more after GDPR now, countries are focusing on being sure that you register the consent of your user in a proper way. VAT calculation as well. It's a nightmare. Even in Europe, it's not the same thing. What is the VAT rate on your shipping cost? Really depends on the country. Promotional mechanics, as I said, like percentage, fixed amount value, etc. And more what is popping up also is direct transmission of order information to the fiscal authorities. So in Taiwan and in Russia now, we are integrated directly with the fiscal authorities to send in real time the order amount to the fiscal authorities. So this is legal and tax. And the second part is what I was presenting before, what will make the customer experience relevant in his country. So it can be a specific communication channel, like SMS in South Korea, specific social network, like Contact in Russia or Kakao in South Korea, the address format also, like if in the United Kingdom, people are very used to be able to say, okay, it's the door on the left, it's up the stairs on the right, etc. So you need to make sure that people can enter their address in the format they are used to. Otherwise, you will just maybe have 20% of packages back at your warehouse. Delivery method, as I was saying also in France, so it's a must-have. People want to be able to pick up their package from the nearest shop, and payment method. So once you have identified the local specificities, there are a few rules to follow to make sure you implement it correctly in your code base. First, legal is local. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a Magento product owner. So if I have a feature which is legally mandatory, I want someone from legal department to tell me, okay, this is how it should work. Second rule, nobody knows local usages better than a local expert or local customers. I'm not South Korean. I don't know how people are using their mobile phones there. So it's really key to either have your business locally to pull out the real usages from customers, or step 3, to benchmark. But when you benchmark carefully and make sure that you compare yourself to similar business, so not necessarily the industry, but make sure that they have similar target audience, similar basket size, average basket size, etc., to make sure that you compare yourself to something relevant. So now, how do you provide local requirement in a global platform and in a single code base? So basically, what we did is we have this kind of methodology, which is adapt, adopt, or abandon. So let's say a country needs to have a local requirement implemented in our global platform. The first possibility is to adapt. What it means? You will adapt your global code base to provide the exact required requirement in your global code base. How do you do that? Either through custom development, or you integrate an existing third-party extension, which usually is developed by a local agency of the country where you want to go. So in South Korea, there are many local agencies developing the extension which is relevant for South Korea. So it can make sense to adopt this extension. But keep in mind, this is the beginning of a journey. You will need to maintain it. So if you take a third-party extension, make sure they will provide you with the updates and the security updates, etc. Don't accept to merge bad quality code as well. Like, you have a global platform, so be sure of what you put in your code, because as I said, you will have to maintain it. Toggle, so it's one thing to bring in a feature, but make sure that you can toggle it on or off, especially if it's a legal requirement. Maybe it will evolve, so you never know what can happen. Don't reinvent the wheel. Yeah, a payment method, it can be country specific, but it's not specific to your business. So don't try to recode a payment method. It exists somewhere. Just find the best fit and take it. Access rights, as I said, if it's a global platform, make sure that when you either code something or import an extension, make sure that you'll be able to manage access rights. You don't want in your global platform, or if you have what we call hubs, one Magento instance, let's say for the Baltic region, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, you don't want Latvia to touch the settings, the VAT settings, or anything from Estonia. So make sure that if you import, if you use a third-party extension, make sure that the ACL rights, so the right management of the Magento user, is correct. And last one can be quite key as well, avoid interdependencies. So avoid to import, to use third-party extension, or to code something that is dependent on another feature, because this is the beginning of the troubles. So if your VAT on shipping rates is depending on the extensions that you took to manage shipping rates, it starts to be complicated. So this is for adapt. The second possibility is to adopt. So in that case, a local requirement will be accommodated, not exactly as it was required, but will go as close as possible from what was required. Here the idea is to avoid extra development. So how we do it? Either we leverage Magento out of the box through some configurations, or we use an existing custom development. Maybe we did a development for another country, which by configuration can be reused to accommodate this new need. Or we use also an existing third-party extension that we already have, and we just change the configuration. Here again, it's all about the investment value. So sometimes it's just better to try to get as close as possible from the requirement, start like this, prove that it really has a benefit, that it increases your conversion rate or your purchase funnel. And if it proves to be right, then go to the next step and then make something custom to go to the last mile. As well, if you go for the adopt technology, you can also try to do some A/B testing. So start with as close as possible, and through A/B testing scenarios, evaluate if going till the next mile would really have an impact or not. And here, the advantage if you adopt is that you still need to maintain it, but at least you are not alone. So it's not your own solution. If you leverage an existing third-party extension that you already had in your code base, many people will have the interest to maintain it and make sure that it works. Then the sad case is, so you have a country that needs a local feature, but basically you will not provide it. So you just abandon it because either the ratio investment value is not good enough, or you are not convinced, or for some reason you believe you need it, but you don't really need it. So as I said, here, sometimes with your business you will have to face frustration, but you can always use analytics and try to identify other paths. Use A/B testing and prove that yes, having this feature would really help the business. And as well, you can survey your user base to identify alternative solutions. So once you have a local feature included in your code base, now you need to operate and maintain. So imagine you have a single code base, 35 instances, 75 countries. What is key, especially for your support organization, know where you are at. So keep documentation and configuration list. It's key to know what is enabled, what is disabled, when did you enable it, in case you face an issue, or you see suddenly in your Google Analytics, I have a drop of 10% in conversion. It's exactly the day when I enabled the new shipment method. So maybe there is here some issue. Track changes and dependencies, and even if you think a feature is just about toggling on, toggling off, use a staging environment. So don't change the configuration of a feature directly in production. Test it first in staging and ensure that there is no interdependency or side effect of just configuring a feature. And also know who has access to what, so ensure proper rights management. As I said, especially if you have some instances where you have several countries, several websites, be sure that you have proper right management to avoid that people change configurations that could affect other part or other websites. And then Continuous improvement. So from the technical standpoint, keep yourself informed, like local requirements, local laws are always evolving. So in Europe, the big thing was GDPR, but you never know what's next. So keep yourself informed. Maintain your extensions up to date. So if you take third-party partner extensions, maintain them up to date and very regularly. You want to avoid to have to upgrade from 1.1 to 2 point something. So really do a regular updates. Leverage clustering. So here what I mean is that if you have several countries who are really similar in their Magento landscape and configurations, when you do a new release, you can leverage the fact that several users have the same usage to spread the task, spread the testing, and the user acceptance of new features. And as well, when you reach a certain size, it can really make sense to invest heavily in automation. So you want to be able to roll out quickly, and this means unit testing and automated testing investment. From business standpoint, analytics and A/B testing are for me two tools that are keys. And one last point also that was mentioned in the previous presentation is about consumer complaint analysis. And I think this is very often discarded, but it brings a lot of value. Just going through the list of your consumer complaints to understand if what you did it right. And if you see that you have a lot of complaints regarding payment method or shipping method, or why don't you propose this shipping method, this is really bringing a lot of insights from the consumer expectation. And it can be used to either drive your roadmap or also understand if you did things properly or not. And basically, yeah, that was it for today. If you have any question, feel free or catch me later. Thank you.